Councilwoman Wallman, Councilwoman Fairclough McCormick, Councilman Shelley,
Here.
Councilman Williams,
Here.
Councilman Maldonado, Vice Mayor Burgess.
Here. Thank you. Any additions, deletions, or deferrals, Mr. Manager? None. Okay. Order of business.
The City of Homestead's rollback millage rate is 5.9215 mils. The proposed millage rate is 5.9215 mils, which is the same as the rollback rate. At this point, we will have a discussion of the proposed tax millage rate and the proposed budget.
Thank you. Mr. Manager, why don't you start us off?
Great, thank you. Okay. Well, first of all, here we are at fiscal year 2014. We're going to get right down to philosophy of the budget. This is a familiar screen to you all. This has been your philosophy over the last few years. In fact, it is the philosophy of many governments all over the country. And it's a screen of good news and it's a screen of bad news. And the good news is the philosophy means that there'll be no tax increase this year. In fact, the tax rate goes down a little bit. The good news is there's no reductions in services, there's no increase in city fees, there's no layoffs, and there's no impact to general fund reserves, your savings account, your rainy day fund. That's the good news. The bad news is there's no millage rate increase and there's no fee increases, and we have to preserve the services. And so as we were talking with the CRA budget, what this screen means is that there's been a concerted effort during this economic recession, in fact, the worst period of time since the Great Depression, to try to hang on to what we have, to say to the taxpayers, look, we're not going to increase your burdens because you can't afford it. There's no more money, so we're not going to ask you for more money. People are losing their jobs, they're losing their homes, so we're not going to put more burden on you. But we're also going to try to keep the government intact because people rely on city service, and also the people who work here rely on their jobs, and putting people out on the street only makes the economy worse. And so the strategy and the philosophy has been status quo budgets, hang in there, patch it up as best as you can, and weather the storm. And so the good news has been that we haven't seen tax increases and we've been hanging on. The bad news is that we're relying more and more on non-recurring revenues, which means over time, those non-recurring revenues at some point diminish and go away. And so at some point, philosophy has to shift. And so whether it's next year or in 2 years or at some point, every government across the country is facing the same problem. We've seen this at the county just recently as we read the headlines about, geez, do we raise taxes or do we close libraries? Do we raise taxes or do we close fire stations? So it's the balance between taxes and service and economic viability, because governments, some governments, the ones that kind of weren't as transparent as they could be, found out after they spent all their savings that there were no more savings left and the hole was so big that they couldn't get out of it. And then they're talking about bankruptcies and chaos. And so we've tried really hard to avoid that. And this philosophy, this budget is predicated on the idea that we're not going to keep going at a runaway train pace and then all of a sudden find we go off the cliff. So we want to warn people in advance that at some point we need to adjust strategy. We'll try to do it as gradually as possible. A couple of unknown factors are what happens with the economy, because that's a big piece to the puzzle. And then also managing expectations, because as you know, you've all heard it as I have, we want more police officers. We want more service. We want more parks. We want soccer fields. We want lights. We want this. We want that. And so you don't have enough money to hang on to what you have now, let alone trying to add a whole lot more stuff. And I'll give you kind of some data to explain where we're at now and how we got there. And it really is two big pieces. One is the economy dropped, and the other one is, as the economy dropped, your population has also increased substantially, creating even more demand for service. Here's what Florida law says. Florida law says that the most you can charge in your millage rate is 10.0. They also calculate a rollback rate, which basically says the amount that is the same amount of revenue that you took in minus the new construction. That's calculated at 5.9215 mill rate. And in essence, what the state says is, in order to be deemed not a tax increase, you can take in more revenue than you did the year before. This was created during tax reform a few years ago at the state, because when property values were increasing, governments were taking that money and they were spending it, but the state determined that you're really increasing taxes, because when your values go up, you're paying more in taxes, and therefore your taxes go up. So this is the form they use, the calculation they use, rollback rate, and that's 5.9. Our current millage rate is 6.235, and since the philosophy was no tax increase, this budget proposes 5.9215, which is in fact the rollback rate. What that means to us, obviously, is because we're rolling back the new revenues that we might have been able to achieve this year. We obviously don't get those new revenues, and therefore even the slight increase in our assessments this year we don't benefit from. And that's where one area where we might want to start looking at in the future is rollback rate really our objective here long term, or do we need to start rethinking that philosophy as the economy starts to improve? This chart tells the whole story. It's an ugly story, it's a shocking story, and it's a story of success as well, because your property values, $2.1 billion worth of value has been wiped out in 5 years. That's the headline, and that's the shocking headline. And the second shocking headline is that you were able to hang on to your government and keep it with integrity while 54% of your city's value has been wiped out. So that's what these last few years have been back, is beating back year after year after year after year of decreases, starting with 20 and 30% decreases. The good news here is that, as you can see from the chart, you went from double-digit decreases to almost a 10% decrease to a little less than a 4% decrease, and then finally a small blip upward, 0.12%. And what that hopefully means to us is the trend is reversed. We're headed in the right direction. I use this quote. I may be repeating myself, but there's a quote that says, when predicting the economy, there are two types of economists, those who don't know and those who don't know they don't know. So I'm going to be the last person to stand up here and tell you I know what's going to happen with the economy, whether that means next year we're going to have increases or not. Everybody's got an opinion on this. My only point here is we have a long ways to go in order to get that $2.1 billion back. And the idea that we've been able to hang on and not have major reductions in services is really the first answer to the question as to, why don't we have more police? Why don't we have more parks? Why don't we have more of this and more of that? Is because you're struggling just to hang on to what you have. And many governments, they went for the direction of, we're going to slash services, we're going to put people out on the street, and this was a decision made by all, by the policymakers, recommended by the staff, to hang in there as long as possible. So that's this slide. The question, when's the last time property values were this low? 9 years ago. So your property values in 14 are $1.8 billion. The last time they were lower was in 2005, when the population was 38,000 people. Now you have 64,000 people. And by the way, if you look at your tax revenues, they tell the same story. Your ad valorem tax went from $16.66 million to now down to $9.16 million, a loss of $7.5 million, 45% reduction in your ad valorem taxes. And let's think about that number in 2005, 38,000 population. Your budget back then was $35 million. We're proposing a $40.43 million from $38.86. That difference, where those increases are coming from, I'm about to explain. But I did want to show you this because I think this is a very telling slide. And what this slide shows is your peak budget. Your population was increasing, your service demand was increasing, so your expenses started to increase. 2007, your general fund budget was $47 million. Today, you're at 64,000 people, and we're proposing a $40 million budget. So when you ask the question, why don't we have more police? Why don't we have more this? Why don't we have more that? And you're asking that question because the taxpayers are asking that question, and the taxpayers are demanding service. And so I'm saying to you that you have a budget now that is 14% lower than it was in '07, when your population is higher, significantly higher, and your CPI has increased 12% from '05. So population goes up, and your budget goes down, demand for service goes up, and it's a struggle for your employees just to hang on and provide the service that is needed. And so that really is the dilemma for this government as well as many other governments. And so what do? Here is the slide that tells a different picture, which is, look at the small piece that's ad valorem taxes to fund your $40 million, 22%, 23%. Your interfund transfers now is growing over time, 26.4 million. That's the piece where we start relying more and more on non-recurring revenues. And so thank God we have the funds. We have more if we have to draw on over the next couple of years to cushion impact. But the idea is to start shrinking that interfund transfer piece and start increasing one of the other pieces. So maybe the state economy picks up and the state share piece picks up. Maybe we get values increasing and we decide we're going to make benefit of some of those values. Maybe other fees increase. Maybe we get more grants. But as that piece of interfund transfers continues to increase, you become really more and more challenged in terms of, are we going to hit the brick wall or not? And we have slowly but surely ratcheted up our concern siren, and at some point it'll be a little louder, but I don't feel at this point this is the time to panic or to shift major in strategy. As our county mayor learned when he thought, hey, maybe this is the year to raise taxes, he got a lot of feedback from people saying, no, this is not the time to raise taxes. And then a few weeks later, a month later, he got a lot of feedback, why aren't we raising taxes? So there is an evolutionary process where you're really starting to evolve as the economy gets better and people start really reassessing what their priorities are for their government. But there is still a growing process, and you're going to need consensus from your community in order to reshift this philosophy, and that's going to be our job over the next couple of years to try to get some direction. Because if the answer is no new taxes, then we're going to have a really serious discussion about what kind of services we're willing to part with. And as the county learned, people weren't willing to part with their libraries, and so the idea was pull it from fund balance. So non-recurring revenue, patch it up, let's hope for the best next year. Many governments have tried that over time. Sometimes they get lucky when the economy approves. Sometimes they do that too much, and all of a sudden there's no more money to draw from, and then we talk about crisis and we talk about slashing and burning. And so we want to make sure that we do this in an evolutionary process and not a revolutionary process. And forgive me for all the preaching, but I think this is my one presentation a year, so I'm going to take my opportunity if I can. Here's the way the budget breaks down. General fund, about 55% of the budget is police, code enforcement, and then you can see the rest of the chart as it breaks down. Parks and recreation, 11%, general administration, 7%. And when you look at the total increase from last year to this year, we're talking about $38.8 million, and we're proposing $40.4, which represents roughly 4% increase from the prior year. And it's important to explain where that 4% increase is. There is some non-discretionary expense on this list that represents that additional money, and I want to make sure people understand the difference between the non-discretionary and the discretionary. Well, first of all, in our health and pension cost category, the overall increase is roughly $450,000. Now, it's interesting that I guess because the stock market's doing much better, we've had some significant increases in the stock market. We had a reduction of $200,000 in pension-related costs. On the other hand, healthcare costs have gone through the roof, and our increase was $650,000. So the net increase in that category is $450,000. And so that represents a fairly significant portion of that 4% increase in the proposed budget. Sports complex, we proposed $467,000 roughly. Now this is a changing number, and this one is going to require some downstream decision making because we're in litigation right now with Wale Sports. Our intention is to take back the stadium, and then your big decision is going to be what do you want to do with that stadium and how much service do you want to provide there. Now you make the decision, we're going to close it down, we're going to provide no service, we're going to let everything just stay the way it is, then that number will go down. On the other hand, just to maintain it the way it is and have the soccer programs there and to activate the space, we're predicting $467,000. So again, this is a function and question about service, what you want to be as a government, and that increase is on there. The other piece is City Hall costs for the temporary building, which we had anticipated. And then there's some miscellaneous expenses, and there's the big question is, and I know many have asked this question, what are we going to do to add more police officers? Well, the police department came up with some creativity in terms of trying to address some of their needs. One was from the general fund budget, adding an additional police officer. The other one was to apply for a grant that will fund an additional 5. That grant decision doesn't come till the end of September. If we put those positions in this budget, then that disqualifies us from the grant funding. So we were very careful. You're not allowed to supplant. So what we wanted to do was see how we do with the grant funding first, and hopefully we'll get the grant funding and we'll get the 5. If we don't get the 5, we're going to have to reevaluate, come back to you, and talk about what some of our options are. There's some additional spending in this budget for additional monies for committee work, as well as $20,000 for county lobbyists. And then there's also some special events that each of you have asked for that we put in here, and that's something for you all to decide. And then also there's one other program. Councilman Williams and I have had a discussion. I know the group has come to you about a Martin Luther King event. The plan was if they can get to next month's, I guess the meeting is September 25th, to come to you and see if you're supportive of funding that program, then we'll pay for it through this current year's budget so they can start on their planning, because it's a big process and it's going to be important for them to know whether they have the funding commitment or not, and or whether you want to put it in, to amend this budget to put it in there. But we'll have more information on that event at the next meeting. That gets us to our total increase of $1.575719, total increase in the general fund. We also put, we had a very extensive, this was year 2 of our major revamp in our capital improvement plan process. You got these huge binders that really gives you the full picture of what the city's capital needs are. As you can see from the binder, there are hundreds of millions of dollars worth of capital needs in the city, and so the staff has been very selective because there's not a lot of money to go around as to what we should be funding for next year. We have asked for $290,000 from the general fund, a total of $914,000 worth of general fund projects that will be funded from other funds, but the total impact to the general fund is $290,000 in capital improvement projects. Just small maintenance items, trying to get by as best as we can. And then in the overall all funds capital improvement plan, total $9.3 million, stormwater fund, electric, solid waste, parks, and you can see the projects delineated there. And then also the more specific detail is in your binders. And also to make it clear for the public, both the capital improvement plan and the budget are on our website. People should feel comfortable going on there, looking, seeing. Transparency is very important to us. And if people have questions, feel free to call us, and we're happy to answer whatever questions. Your enterprise funds represent about $97 million of your budget, with electric utility being the largest piece of the pie. All funds budget, $167 million, with enterprise funds being almost 60% of the pie, general fund only 24%. The increase in all funds total goes from 161 to 167 million dollars. And you're going to see a slight difference in total staffing counts. You can see that we go from 458 to 464. One of those is reflected there is the new police officer. And so this number would change if we get grant approval. You'll see that number change. And also 5 new part-time positions are reflected in this. They're really not, it's not new work per se. It's we're reapportioning and restructuring the way we handle the part-time positions. So it's really not more spending, but it is more positions to spread out the work. We're asking the council to adopt the final millage rate of 5.9215 mils and to adopt the fiscal year 2013-2014 city budget. I love this chart. This is one of my favorite because every time people talk about my tax dollars, well, our own piece is only 26%. So I throw that out there, take it for whatever it means, but we like to say that we're the smallest portion of that, 26%. And then want to see the budget? Feel free to go to the website, call us. We're happy to answer questions. And I would ask the council if you could indulge us for just 3.5 more minutes. We have a little tribute to our staff. I thought this was important for 2 reasons. We stand here, we have these binders filled with numbers, and we talk about this, and as the finance people too, more as scientists than as artists. But the truth of the matter is, what the book is that you have in front of you is really not about numbers as much as about people, and what your mission here is as a government. It's also fitting since this is September 11th, and you know the day the towers went down, I was running a city in New York, about 45 minutes from Manhattan, and many of our residents there in White Plains worked in Manhattan, and we got the call like everybody else, how many of our residents are going to actually come back, and how many of our students are going to be in the schools waiting for mommy and daddy, and they're not there because they were killed in the towers. And we had many residents that were killed that day, and we all, as a nation, watched the importance of government. What is government's mission, and why is it important? And when times get tough, it's very easy to bash government, to make government the punching bag. But when you see September 11th, when you see Hurricane Andrew, you really see why government is very meaningful to people, why it's an important to everybody, and why it's important that we be prepared and that we be there for not only times of crisis, but it's the small things as well. So you'll see the slide here. You'll hear the lyrics of the song, which I think are also meaningful because it really is, my favorite line is in here is, the strongest among you does not wear a crown. And the truth of the matter is your staff, the ones that you give direction to, the ones that you've protected and say, we're not going to let anybody out on the street, they're out there every day having a meaningful role in people's lives. So it's not just the police that get called out on a 911 call, but it's the staff member in the pool teaching the kid how to swim, who probably won't learn how to swim without that staff member, somebody who's there spending their summer there, making sure that kid has something to do. And so I really want to just take this opportunity to thank the staff who have sacrificed just like everybody else. No raises, and the making more with less, and trying to keep the city intact during a very difficult time. And so to the staff, I say thank you, and this one is for you. And thank you, council members, for your support, because we've all seen that we're all in the same life raft together. We've been in the storm, we've been in a life raft, and but for you, some people would have gone overboard. And the value that you inculcate when you say, we're not going to let anyone go overboard. We're in this together, and we're going to get through the storm together. It's such a powerful thing for a culture of an organization to tell your staff that you care about them, that you support them, and what that makes them do is work even harder. And when you see the people's lives that they touch here, it makes me excited to get up every single day and serve others. And these people here, they could have picked anything else in their lives to do. They could have done anything they wanted with their lives, and they chose to spend their lives serving others. And to them, I say thank you. Bravo. Bravo. That's what that book represents. That's what your staff is doing on a daily basis, and that's what you do sitting up there on that dais. So thank you very much, and I'm here to answer any questions that you have.
Okay.
All right.
Questions?
No question, I moved the budget.
Thank you. Anybody else with questions? Okay, hearing none, seeing none, we'll move on. Mr. Attorney, if you could read the
Resolution of the City Council of the City of Homestead, Florida, establishing a proposed millage rate and ad valorem taxation for fiscal year beginning October 1st, 2013, ending September 30, 2014.
Thank you. Is there a motion? There's been a motion. Is there a second? It's been moved and seconded. Thank you. Okay, we've had the staff report. Any questions from the council now? Hearing none, seeing none. I'll open up for public questions. Any comments for or against the budget from the public? Please come forward, state your name and address. And remember, we are taking questions on the budget.
I have one quick comment. First of all, I want to thank staff and city manager so much for all your hard work putting this together. This was something else, and you got me up here with that. I've been with you guys for 12 years, and you are truly why, I can't speak for everybody, but I know you feel the same. It's truly why we do what we do, because of you. And I think that should play on our television station, on the government station. I think everybody should know just how great you are. So thank you.
Mrs. Powell.
Clara Waterman Powell, 745 Southeast 18th Lane. I wasn't planning on speaking, but I had a chance to read it while you were reviewing it. Page 13, General Fund Highlights, Miscellaneous Additions. I was noticing that one of the great economic drivers in Homestead is not listed, the rodeo. People come from thousands of miles, buy hotel rooms, spend in our restaurants. We don't have that down. A chili cook-off, which doesn't bring people from thousands of miles away, or perhaps a Jingle Bell Run does. I'm not associated with the rodeo. I just was noticing that this wasn't in here. That's all. I'm not complaining. I'm just saying maybe somebody missed it, but I just want to say thanks for letting me speak.
We don't have a funding request in for them, but obviously we work very closely with them in providing the facilities, which has pretty significant value there.
Thank you. Thank you, Mrs. Powell. Dr. Von Lauer.
Good evening. Mr. Vice Mayor, Council, City Manager, Department Heads, and audience. My name is Joe Von Lauer. I live at 2705 Augusta Drive, 33035. I'm the president of Committee for a Better Homestead, and we're back again this year to give a little analysis from our viewpoint on the budget. And this analysis was put together by my committee with input from other residents. The presentation was great, Mr. City Manager, and your comments about not knowing or not knowing that you don't know are right on the money. I am an economist, and I don't know, but I've been doing it for 50 years, and so, like so many of the people here, we can benefit from our experience. And a lot of what has been put together here is based on the experience of the council and the department heads. To reiterate, it is a monumental feat to balance a budget in these economic times. And we've done this a number of times in a row, and it's a tribute to our city leaders. Every year when I stand here, we address the ongoing debate of raising taxes or cutting services or finding new sources of revenue. And I like to think that any shortfalls can be dealt with through increasing revenues. There are many projects and projects that will help us raise revenues. But some of what I'm going to say here will maybe help plug some of the gaps in the budget. We always have to move money around one way or the other in order to address shortfalls. One of the things that we noticed, and our numbers are from the first preliminary budget that was released. We saw that Homestead has roughly $88 million in cash and investments. And we feel that everything must be done to ensure that the maximum income is derived from these investments within the parameters of our constitutional investment guidelines. And I know we try to do that. I know that Carlos is on top of that. But when we're looking at that amount of money, as an economist, I'm pretty sure that there are things that we can do which will help us generate further income. Interest rates are changing, and this is something that I've been talking about for a couple of years because it was inevitable that interest rates begin to go up. And a lot of our debt is variable and it's based on, it can change on short notice down to a day. And if interest rates increase, that means that our debt service increases. And if interest rates jump any further, it's going to make a dent in our budget. And so it behooves us to be very astute and recognize that steps should be taken to address rising interest rates. We also understand that there are a lot of items that the city has for sale, ranging from property to vehicles. We think that a greater effort should be made to sell everything that we are not going to use or we can't use, and that we should attempt to get obviously the highest price we can for these items. Many city investments and debt are based on interest rates, and again, as interest rates fell, Homestead made money or paid less in debt service. Interest rates are going up fairly quickly, meaning we are earning less money and paying more interest. I have warned of this for a couple of years. It's already affecting our debt service, and we need to address this situation. As for government activities and services, we took a look at the budget and we went back to 2003 through 2012. And roughly, in that period of time, government activities and expenses rose 78%. For the same period of time, government revenues increased by 44%. So you see what the city fathers are faced with here. In other words, expenses increased almost twice as fast as revenues, which tells us that we must find new sources of revenues, or, as the city manager has been warning us, we're going to have to deal with higher taxes. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. You can't be a little bit pregnant. It's going to be one or the other. So we find new revenue, or we cut expenses, cut services. We did a budgetary comparison schedule of the general fund, and we discovered that there are 5 line items with negative variance. That would be property taxes, licenses and permits, recreation fees, investment income, rentals, and others. So what does that tell us? It tells us that budget forecasts could be more accurate. If forecasts are improved, then budgeted amounts would be more accurate, thereby saving us from the difficult task of deciding where to take the money to fill the shortfalls. So that's a little bit of what we found, and committee member Greg Wells has a few comments for us too. But again, I want to say what a great job everyone did here, and the presentation was terrific. And on behalf of the citizens that we represent, I want to thank you and congratulate you.
Thank you, Dr. Joe. And words like that from a man of your education and background mean a lot to us, and I'm sure to everybody here in the city, so thank you. You never know what's going to come when somebody walks to a podium on budget night, so to hear praise is good. Mr. Wells.
Greg Wells, 533 Northwest 14th Street, Homestead, Florida. Try following in his footsteps to get up here. No, I do not have a doctorate degree. I feel like that mouse and the elephant that walks across that bridge, that rope bridge, and you get to the other side, and the mouse looks up at the elephant and said, "We really shook that bridge, didn't we?" Some of you will get that later. All right. All right, I did not know I was going to do this. I did look at it, though. Doc said I had to, so I did. He was the professor. I did notice, though, while I was sitting there, Mr. City Manager, for some reason when I walked in, I heard no taxes, but I'm seeing no millage rate increase in your budget philosophy. Are there other taxes? Is your other taxes? Is the philosophy also no taxes increase and anything else? Because I know there's lots of other taxes out there. Is that also your philosophy, or is that still on the table?
Yeah, no, it's no in fact, the millage rate goes down, and any fees, everything stays the same. So there really is. Carlos, you want to verify that?
There's no other way to get in our pockets or anything like that?
That's correct. No, sir.
Okay, just want on that on record there. All right, that's good. Now, I did notice that the ad valorem, you took down 4% in the revenues. We're talking about the revenues. The first line was adjusted from the adjusted 2013. It went down 4%. And it was like a couple of, I'm not sure how much it was. Why would, that jumped out. I know we're building. Why we're building, I don't know, but we're building, and the houses are selling. So it means more taxes, right, Doc? Okay, just one. Why would that go down?
Again, part of it is the millage rate went down. So even though the property slightly went up, the millage rate still went down. The other thing with the rollback rate, like the manager said, even though the idea behind the millage rate is to make the revenues that we received last year equal to this year, that's based on your original levy. The problem is that with value adjustment boards, that they reduce property values during the year. People file and argue that their values should be lowered, and they get that. That affects us because when they're comparing the rollback rate, they're comparing it to what we levied, not to what the actual revenues that we bring in. So that's part of the reason why there's that difference. Theoretically, rollback rate, if it was based on the levy, you would be bringing in, ideally, the same amount of revenues that you brought the last year, but using the rollback rate. But that's the reason why it doesn't. There is a flaw with that.
Okay, all right. And it's all projected anyway. But, all right. All right, I noticed in the revenue also, follow me. The water, you had going up 1.4%. You had the solid waste going up 10%. There's two questions there. Stormwater went up 60%, but electricity went down 4.5%. That seems to be, I don't know. That is, first of all, with the 60% stormwater, did we put in something new?
What line specifically are you looking at that would help us?
You would ask me that. Now, I'm going on, like Doc said, from previous.
Yes,
I'm
answer
sorry.
that question.
City expenses.
I can answer that question. Basically, the stormwater fee is based on, it's a calculation, it's a mathematical calculation based on the impermeable area that a property has. What we've seen this year, more than years past, is more commercial building than actual residential building. So in commercial building, there's usually more parking areas, et cetera, that are impermeable, don't let the water get into the ground. Therefore, we're realizing added revenue because of that, because those particular properties are paying higher fees for that stormwater.
All right. But, let me make sure I get this right. This was an expense, so you're expecting that to go up. The stormwater, I'm looking at the stormwater expense. It was adjusted 2013 at 1.7 million. You got it going up to 2.7 million. Am I
Sir,
wrong here?
where are you getting that? We're not showing that.
Okay, you don't have that then. So how much did it go up then? So that's fine. And again, I'm looking at,
We're at 1.755. Right.
oh, that's what you're at? Hold on. Now I'm just giving what, oh yeah, because I got projected mine 2.7. But so you're right in line then. Okay, so the 60% is fine. So why would electricity go down when everything else is going up? And again, with the new houses and all that. Am I off on that also? I didn't mean to create a stir here.
We've seen a decrease in the price of natural gas. A lot of our generation is based on natural gas, and so you'll see a decrease in the cost.
Sounds good to me. All right. Parks and Recreation expense. This has always been a question of mine. It went up from so the one I have again. It went up from adjusted 2013 to projected 2014, 12%.
The Parks and Recreation basically had two major changes. One of them is the sports complex, which the manager addressed as one of the items. That's about a $466,000 impact. In addition to that, there was a division that used to be in the Public Works that really reports to Parks and Recreation. That's a facilities maintenance. That's about $157,000. Right. So that was a shift from one division to the other.
All right. So you don't think it's gone up 68% since 2012? So my question is, so you don't anticipate you don't anticipate that trend?
Between 2012 and 2013, there were also two parks that they took on, Roby George Park and the FICO Williams operations that they took over as well.
These three parks that we said we were in? Okay, so that's my question. Nothing's free, and you bring in all these parks, we got to maintain them. How many parks are we going to, what's the end game here? Is it one per block, or we have enough? We don't have enough dogs?
By what we have now, by the National Service, we have enough parks for 90,000 residents.
Yeah, I would say. All right, good. 90,000.
Yes, sir, 90,000.
And a lot of dogs. Right, all right.
A lot of dogs.
Okay. All right, so we're going to see that, because it bothers me to see that the police department, and I realize they're a lot bigger number, it just seems to me it's like we're building swings and slides to bring down crime instead of police officers. That's just my personal opinion on that. Now, one last one. I noticed, and I quit adding up, but the other department's life and health insurance. All right? Well, I was told that was all going down, we were all taken care of, but that's beside the point. Everything, each department, and I quit adding up, it went anywhere from a 17% increase to a 56% increase. and I quit adding up at $500,000. Now, my question is, I know why it's going up. You don't have to tell me why. Is this based on the actual quote, or is this what they're telling you is coming down the road?
That's projection based on historical trends and what we see in the industry.
All right. So, in your opinion, in the next 2 years, is this going to get out of hand?
Sir, I can't project what's going to happen in the future, but I know that we're at or about the national average of what healthcare costs.
Well, yeah. Okay, good.
It's already out of hand.
I'm sorry?
It's already out of hand.
Well, okay. In other words, have we already received the blunt of this, or we got a 56% increase? Is that going to be the blunt, or is it going to, we're going to get it adjusted 2014, it's going to be?
It's the same answer as predicting the economy. It's just the kind of thing where people have got a lot of opinions, and but we're just trying to get by with what we can.
All right, thank you. Thank you.
Well, it's great to have a company like that. I've gone to their meeting before. My name is Nicole Wynn, 17901 296th Street. And Vice Mayor, Council, audience, our heroes, and everyone that serves the city. I'm 21 years old. I've lived in Homestead for over 10 years. And I'm not an economist. I'm not here to nitpick at the budget, but I am a business owner because I saw at a young age that business was the way, small business is the engine of the world. IBM says that. That's their new thing in the commercials, that small businesses are the engine of our world. And I just think, in terms of just the budget, everyone's doing what they can with the resources that we got. Because everyone here is qualified, everyone knows the issues. Everyone up here, I know, and I've spoken to, and they're wonderful people, and they're serving our city of Homestead as best they can. Now, I'm a voice for the youth. Okay, and I started an organization called Hey Homestead Engaging Youth, and we're just going to be focusing on just involving kids and trying to, I'll go to these meetings and then I'll kind of like report back to them and let them know what happened. And in terms of the budget, and interest rates and all of that, I really am no expert in that, but I do know that having a small business that, a business owner just needs support in that way. I know, I read Freakonomics, and Freakonomics says that getting what you want is economics. So I get what I want. I started a business, I built a team, and I just think that if we had more young people guided in that way, I think if you guys just, continue to support the young people, we can do wonderful things in this city. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other comments from the public? Hearing none, seeing none, I'll now close the public comments. Any last questions, comments from the council?
Just, Vice Mayor.
Yes.
I just want to make a few comments. Mr. Gretzis and staff, I just want to take the time to thank you for this great job that you've done. Like it's been said, the last 3 years we've seen a trend in transparency in our budget, and it helps us to see where we are. I'm really proud to be a part of this process, and knowing that we've set the standard and we've balanced our budget, and now we have a good platform to stand on in which we can move forward. So my hat's off to you, and I applaud to you, to our first responders that are here and always working hard in our city. Thank you, Chief. Excellent job. And our staff members that are all the directors, you guys have done an excellent job, and I appreciate all the work you've done. Thank you, Mr. City Manager.
Thank you. Any other comments? Roll call, Madam Clerk.
Councilman Maldonado,
Yes.
Councilwoman Waldman,
Yes.
Councilwoman Fairclough McCormick,
Yes.
Councilman Shelley,
Yes.
Councilman Williams,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Burgess,
Yes.
the motion carries.
Thank you. I'll now entertain a motion for adjournment.
Move it. No, so
Move
we
it,
need to,
seconded.
sorry, we need to vote. There's an ordinance that was the millage, and now we need to vote on the budget ordinance. An ordinance of the City of Homestead, Florida, adopting a budget for each of the several funds and departments of the city for fiscal year beginning October 1st, 2013, ending September 30th, 2014, providing for a repealer, severability, and an effective date. This is a first reading and public
Move
hearing.
it.
Moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Staff report.
Staff recommends the mayor and council adopt the budget for several funds and departments of the city of Homestead for the fiscal year beginning October 1st, 2013 and ending September 30th, 2014. Total proposed budget is $167,268,575 in revenues and expenditures.
Thank you. Any questions? Any public comments? Hearing none, seeing none, I'll close public comment. Okay, roll call, or any last comments from the council? Roll call, please.
Councilwoman Waldman,
Yes.
Councilwoman Fairclough McCormick,
Yes.
Councilman Shelley,
Yes.
Councilman Williams,
Yes.
Councilman Maldonado,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Burgess.
Yes.
The motion carries.
Thank you. We've already had a motion and a second for adjournment. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Take a couple quick minutes for the clerk.